Okay, let's start, Sugandhi.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Warmly welcome to the panel discussion hosted by the Faculty of Natural Sciences. The panel discussion is about the protected areas as a natural solution for the climate change. So today, actually, while the 2022 United Nations Climate Change Conference happening in Egypt right now with the participation of more than 35,000 of people, including hundreds of leaders from the different countries. Actually, in this moment, a lot of things happening because even while we are facing economic crisis and a lot of geopolitical tensions, still there is a huge crisis pending because we are facing the energy crisis and concentrations of the greenhouse gas emissions. And then again, we are facing imminent increase of extreme weather events. In this context, the world, the countries actually seek the solidarity to commit more for the Paris Agreement. So in this context, this is the best time for this discussion because it is high time to create vibes about protected areas, how they become a natural solution for the climate change. So I'm Sugandhi, I'm from United Nations Development Program, and I'm moderating this session. So here, before we start, from where should we start? Actually, I think the point of view of meteorological department counts here. So we see, actually, why? Because they are the entity who is collecting, who is observing, and then providing weather and climatological services. What do they think? The best person to talk about, I think, a person who is having more than 50 years of experience within the Department of Meteorology as the retired Director General, and then a person actually who had represented national and international fora about IPCC and then World Meteorological Organization, again about tsunami, the SARC institutes, everywhere, a person who is having a very vital experience. So I here invite Mr. Garthi Dharmaratne, the retired Director General, to start the session actually. Let's start simply. So I think my first question to you is, could you please explain climate and weather and then build on that? Again, could you please say what are the elements of climatic elements, then climatic factors, and after explaining this, what is climate change and what is global warming, how these two is going to be related? I think it would be a good start for the discussion. So over to you, Mr. Garthi.
Good afternoon. Thanks, Sugandhi. Actually, now everybody talking about the climate change. I think first is like you said, it's better to know what is the difference between weather and climate. You know, the weather. Weather, if you tell about the weather is the what is it? See. How is it now?
It is better.
Yeah. So the weather is the state of atmosphere at some place at time described in terms of such variables like, you know, everybody knows temperature, cloudiness, precipitation, wind pressure, and other meteorological parameters. Then what is climate? Climate is generally defined as the average state of the atmosphere for a given time. So that is the important given time scale. It may be our day, month, or seasons, year, decade, and so forth, and generally for a specified geographical area. So that is now anybody can say now if somebody asks what is the climate of Nuwara, you may be able to say because the seasonal climate is this. But somebody asks what is the weather in Nuwara, but of course we have to give a call and find out what is the weather, because that is the difference between weather and climate. Now actually for this one there are parameters. Now there are what you said, then what are the climatic elements and climatic factors. I think these are very important. Now climatic elements, that is any one of the properties of the conditions of the atmosphere which together specify the weather, physical state of the weather or climate. So like I have already told you, all these pressure, temperature, all are climatic elements. And atmospheric pressure, everything. Then what are the climatic factors? Climatic factors are certain physical conditions which control the climate. So the climatic factors are controlling the climate. What are the physical conditions controlling the climate? Latitude. Now you know that we are in the tropics. We know it controls the tropical climate. Then we go to the temperate, so higher latitude. Then medium latitude, mid latitude, higher latitude. So different latitude, you have the different terms of climate. So that is that control the climate, because not like the weather elements or the climatic elements. And therefore the climatic factors are agencies which produce or control the outcome of climate or weather. So these are the things actually control the thing. This is which control. So this is the climate factors. And then what is the mean climate? Now, if you say the mean climate, the Earth global mean climate is determined by the incoming energy. So we know that all the energy we are coming from the sun. So without the radiation coming from the sun, we may not have the climate. So that happened I think a long time back when the meteorites hit the surface of Earth and it covered with dust, and not a single radiation came to the surface, and all the living things exist. So therefore, this is the Earth global climate determined by the incoming energy from the sun and by the properties of the Earth and the atmosphere. So other thing is the properties of the Earth and the atmosphere. What are the properties of Earth and the atmosphere? That is the reflection, then the absorption and the emission. So any of these things changes, the reflection, absorption, and emission. That is first thing is the coming energy from the sun. It changes, the climate will change. Then what about the reflection? If the reflection is more, climate will change. There will be global cooling. And then the absorption and the emission. So these are the things actually, these changes change the climate. So this is the thing. Then I think we'll go to the global warming and climate change. So most of the people, they interchange this one. They say global warming, they consider this one as the climate change as the global warming. But no, now what is actually happening now? Happening now is we are emitting a lot of greenhouse gases and the warming is taking place. So that is called the global warming. Global warming affects the increase in the average temperature of the globe, Earth's atmosphere. Climate change is actually different. Climate change is actually when the globe, main thing is actually now we are doing is we are warming the atmosphere. When it is warming, what will happen is warming interact with the other things. So because of the warming, the climate is changing. Then the atmosphere, changing the seasonal temperature will change because of the globing. And then there will be extreme events. The sea level will rise. All these things are actually, these are the climate change. So therefore, global warming, climate change may be positive or negative. Now, even the climate is cooling, that's also climate change. So therefore, now you know that even the greenhouse gas emissions, there will be some cooling part. If there are dust particles and others are more, there will be a cooling effect. So therefore, it counteracts. the warming and cooling both. So that is the global warming. So I think this is how it goes on. I think I have answered your question. If there's anything you want to know about, I mean, to know the public about it, so I can tell what.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Gardi. Climate change is a thing with many dimensions. Actually, when we think of drought, so because of frequent extended droughts, we see that these days there are droughts, storms, then again sea level rising, melting of glaciers, and then again expansion of the ocean because of heat and lot of things happening. So when these things happen, then again the human, animals, their habitats get impacted. So in this scenario, we can see climate change in a different aspects also. So now we were listening to Mr. Gardi, and I want to see climate change through another lens. So that's why I'm inviting another person, very special person with more than 20 years of experience as a professional wildlife biologist, and then again a specialist on protected area, a planner, then environmental and natural resource specialist. More than everything, he's a great teacher to the university and outside the university also, a teacher to many. So now I invite Dr. Kalinga Padmalal to explain the climate change further in his perspective. Over to you, Dr. Padmalal. Sir, you are muted. Hello, sir, you are muted. Could you please unmute you?
Did it? Okay, can you hear?
Yes. we
Okay,
can
thank
hear.
you. Thank you, Sugandhi. You started the session with a very good, the very good baseline, asking Gadi, the Director General, retired Director General of the Meteorological Department, asking about these fundamentals about the weather, then weather leads to climate, and then the climatic variation and climate, global warming, and the climate change. These aspects very clearly explained by Gadi. So if you are asking me about the climate change, as Gadi mentioned that climate change is a long-term change in the average weather patterns that have come to define Earth's local, regional, and global climates. So these changes have a broad range of observed effects that are synonymous with the term climate change. The climate change refers to the long-term shift in temperatures and weather pattern as explained by Agadi. These shifts may be a natural one. However, since 1980s, human activities have been the main driver of climate change, primarily due to the burning of fossil fuels like coal, oil, and gases, which produce heat-trapping gases. Therefore, climate change is a shift in those average conditions of the climate, and the rapid climate change we are now seeing is caused by human activities uh, and factories and transportation aspects. When these fossil fuel burn, they release greenhouse gases, mostly carbon dioxide, and Dr. Gadi will explain on about the greenhouse gases and all. I'm not going into detail, but it emits greenhouse gases, and these gases trap the as sun's heat and cause the planet's temperature to rise. So due to this temperature rise, the global warming will take place, is taking place, and the global warming will eventually uh, act upon the climate change in different part of the world. The world is now about 1.1 centigrade warmer than it was in the 19th century, and the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere has risen by 50% up to now. So therefore, that is how the climate change I can define. And I hope Dr. Mr. Gadi will explain the gases. We are talking about the greenhouse gases. We are talking about the greenhouse effect and what are the greenhouses. And I think over to you, Sugandhi, to get the explanation from other panelists.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Padmalal. So, Mr. Gadi, I heard that the connection very well. So that shall we elaborate more on what are the greenhouse gases and what is the greenhouse effect? And then again, what is enhanced greenhouse effect? And finally, you can show us how the greenhouse effect can impact the humans. So over to you, Mr. Gadi.
Yeah, thank you. Now, actually, why we call the greenhouse gases? Because greenhouse gases came because of the greenhouse. I think you know that in temperate now this is I am not telling about the now greenhouse. Now greenhouses they are internally they are controlling the temperature artificially, pumping water vapor and cooling, but not the now at the earlier the greenhouse actually used in temperate countries to grow tropical plants or flowers, so fruits. So what is that? What is that? That is actually made out of glass or transparent material. Glass or fiberglass. Now those is glass. So what will happen? You know that sun. Now we have two forms of radiation. One is solar radiation. We call it short wave radiation. Another one is the long wave radiation. That is the emitted from the Earth and other things. Now, sun's radiation actually from actually 0.2 to 4 microns. So that is including the visible light. So what will happen in the greenhouse? The solar radiation can come through the glass. Normally it can penetrate the glass and come, and then what will happen is it come and heat the inside, plants and ground, everything. Then actually to balance the incoming solar radiation, the ground emit long wave radiation. That is in the long wave radiation because ground is much cooler than sun. Sun's of course radiating temperature we take as 6,000 degrees Celsius or Kelvin. It's a small. And the ground is actually we say as about 15 degrees. So ground emit the long wave radiation. What will happen in the glass roof? It prohibited sending the long wave radiation out because only few radiation go out of the glass. And the others inside the thing and it get warm. Then the inside the greenhouse is about 5 degrees warmer than the outside. So this is the principle. Now you know that when even the house, the solar radiation, short wave radiation coming through the glass. If you close the windows, coming through the glass and heated, but you know house you become very warm. Why? The long wave radiation can't go through the glass unless you open the window. So that is the main principle. So then the atmosphere also behaving like that. What will happen in the atmosphere? Now atmosphere, you got the short wave radiation and near ultraviolet ray, that is near visible radiation mostly coming through the atmosphere, but the atmospheric gases are some of the things reflected, about one third reflected out from the outer layer of the atmosphere. But most of the gases in the atmosphere, even the carbon dioxide, all you so-called greenhouse gases, won't absorb these short wave radiation. It can come through the short atmosphere and come to the surface of the earth. And then the earth get heated up. Earth get warm up. And then earth also, to balance the outgoing radiation, earth also started emitting the radiation, the long wave radiation. But what will happen? The greenhouse gases, water vapor, carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, and nitrogen, ozone in the small extent. These are natural occurring greenhouse gases. It absorbs. And then there are man-made greenhouse gases called the halogens. Those also absorb. Go absorb and re-emit to the surface of the earth. So then the surface, now halogen is not earlier there, not there. So normally it comes, and then the temperature of the surface is more. So it become habitable. Now, if we don't have any of these greenhouse gases, what will happen? So all the earth get heated up, and then when it's radiating, all the long wave radiation will go to the space, and the earth temperature will be about 30 degrees less than now. So this greenhouse effect is necessary. That is the thing we need, because some people say greenhouse effect is dangerous. No, we need the greenhouse effect. The enhanced greenhouse effect is the dangerous thing. So the thing is now actually what will happen is naturally the amount of blanket has put over there. Now we know that if you go to a cold place, what to do is you put up a blanket. So then what will happen is the outgoing radiation from the body will be equal to the blanket also reflect won't amount that the radiation go out. So you feel comfortable. So then, like our Dr. Padmanabhan said, what are the greenhouse gases? Because of this greenhouse effect, because of this now like the greenhouse in the temperate countries, that is the greenhouse. So because of that we call this a greenhouse effect, and because of that greenhouse, it acts as the properties like a greenhouse in the temperate countries, we call the greenhouse gases, because the name came from the greenhouse. So the greenhouse gases are what are the main greenhouse gas is actually water vapor. Water vapor, but water vapor is not using to mitigate the climate, because water vapor is lifetime of water vapor is 8 days or 8 to 10 days in the atmosphere. So therefore, then the other gases are carbon dioxide, nitrous oxide, ozone, methane, and the man-made gases, hydrocarbons. So these are the things actually greenhouse gases. What will happen now? Natural occurring greenhouse gases, we had carbon dioxide, ozone, nitrous oxide, methane, all the balanced state, we had everything. Because of that, our temperature is become stable for last billion of years. Our temperature hasn't changed. The ice years and other years are there, but almost there. Now, what we are doing now? We are doing is we are the industries and then emitting lot of carbon dioxide. No, out of this one, carbon dioxide, nitrous oxide, methane, and hydrocarbons are long-lived greenhouse gases. Ozone is a short-lived. Ozone is it's not coming for the mitigation. It comes and sometimes some places it localized, but it's not taken as long-lived greenhouse gases. So other greenhouse gases are actually increasing now. Unprecedented level, all the other gases are increasing. So what will happen? So industries and the clearing of forests. So forest, what we do is now forest is the sink of greenhouse. Carbon dioxide sink in the forest. Now the thing is actually ultimately what will happen is emission of greenhouse gases, then sink. Emission minus sinks is the thing in the atmosphere. So now carbon dioxide is absorbed by the sea also. So therefore, most of the things emitted, it won't stay in the atmosphere. About 50% will be absorbed by the others. So the thing is now this is increasing. Because of this increase, what will happen is the amount of absorption of the long wave radiation is more in the lower part of the atmosphere. That is actually coming in 5 kilometers range. But above the 5 kilometers, outgoing radiation and incoming radiation equal. But within this region, this is increasing. So what will happen? This increasing. Then the blanketing effect will increase, intensify. And now like that, now you are feeling cold and you put a blanket. And then somebody comes and put about 50 blankets on top of you. What will happen? Even Even you are comfortable with one blanket, but others are forcing to put blankets. So then even with that cold places, you won't be able to live because that is become warming. So that is what we are doing now. Now, first what we have to do is we have to stop putting more blankets over us. And then we have tried to remove the already put blankets back slowly by like preparing forest and sinks and these carbon sinks and try to remove the blanket. So that then actually we are keeping the climate for the future generation. I think I answered your question. I hope.
Yes, actually very interesting with all these practical examples. Yeah, I think all understood it very well. And so here that I want to say that we all concerned about climate change. Then maybe you may be questioning yourself, is it affecting us? Is it affecting me? However, whatever your opinion is, climate change is affecting all of us, not only us. Do you think the snow leopards, turtles, these polar bears, these awesome creatures, they are awesome to us. We like to talk about them. But are they affected by the climate change? Are their habitats affected by the climate change? That's why I think we want to understand why climate change is important. I think the best person to talk about this is Dr. Lakshman Piris, who is environmental and social safeguard specialist presently, but with the experience of more than 25 years within Department of Wildlife Conservation in National Park Management, then on research, then about protected area management and natural resource management, etc. So that we would like to hear from you, Dr. Lakshman, why this climate change is so important.
Okay, thank you, Sugandhi. Can you hear me? Because I am in now.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Rural area, digitally, within the forest. Okay, in the forest. Okay, thank you, Sugandhi, again. And because why climate change is important? It is very important questions because it's important for us as a human, and also it is important for other living beings, because the climate impacts all our day-to-day activities now. We all can experience that change of weather patterns with continuous rain or heavy drought or prolonged droughts. And also we experience flood and also landslides, and thereafter displacement of humans and settlements, and damage to the crop and properties. Those are the impact that we are experiencing now. And when we think about our child during our younger age, 2 decades back, and we had experience with systematic weather patterns, and all our activities had been planned according to the weather patterns or in parallel to the climate season. But now, and also the agriculture and other developments, even our personal activities had been planned considering the weather patterns that we had in earlier. But now, be very difficult to predict the weather pattern and plan our activities for a long time, even for a month. We can't predict the weather pattern, and we are very difficult to plan our duties or activities with unexpected weather changes. And therefore, climatic change is very, very important us to plan our whole activities in respect to the impact of climate change. That is regarding the human, us. And when we consider about the habitat of animal, that we can, the habitat is different type different type of habitats we can see within the forest, and even with prolonged drought or prolonged the heavy precipitation, the habitat condition is also changing, and the animal used to live this habitat, and we can see some changes, and the impact to their habitat, and also as the managers, the human or wildlife or forest managers has to pay more attention on the management of those habitat in respect to the climate change effect. So in this context, we can say that climate change is very, very important, and understanding the climate change impact is very, very important for us to plan our day-to-day activities, and also even all activities to plan anything. Okay.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lakshman. I heard that the importance, why climate change is important. Then again, that when the drought is there, that we lose the agricultural production. When flood is there, that food production gets impacted, and then infrastructure maybe get impacted, diseases may spread. So there are a lot of things. But then again, I heard you were talking in between importance and impact also. But then again, to give more stress to impact, now I humbly invite Dr. Kalinga Padmalal to discuss about the impact of climate change.
Yeah, as Gadi very correctly mentioned that the global warming and greenhouse enhanced greenhouse gases, how it affect the temperature using the blanket phenomenon, and that is very, very important. That is very clearly understood now. Therefore, then when this global warming is there are certain amount of climate change will be there, and that is going to be very detrimental, right? Therefore, when the climate change is okay, greenhouse gases is okay to plant our activities and all those things, but the enhanced greenhouse gases will increase the global warming that will result the significant climate change activities around the globe. So because of the climate change, we can understand some direct consequences due to man-made climate change. Those things, if I'm going to name, what we can say that, as Gadi explained, rising the maximum temperature in certain areas, the rising the minimum temperature in certain areas, the rising the sea level due to the glaciers melting. Then again, it is very important that the higher ocean temperatures will be encountered due to climate change. On top of that, now we are also experiencing an increase in heavy precipitation, heavy rainfall in certain parts of the countries, the continents, and the region. And in addition to that, because of the climate change, the adverse effect, we can see that the increase in the proportion of violent tropical cyclones in certain part of the countries. Right? These are some of the more important characters. And on top of that, the majority of the countries are facing aridity and the drought because of this climate change due to global warming. More frequent and intense droughts, storms, heat waves, rising sea level, melting glaciers, and warming ocean can directly harm animals, destroy the places they live, and wreak havoc on the people's livelihood and communities. This is very important. As climate change worsens, dangerous weather events are becoming more frequent or very severe. the major environmental problem like global warming and also acid rain, air pollution, waste disposal, ozone layer depletion, water pollution, climate change, and many more affect the human, animal, and nation on this planet. Therefore, the climate change is linked with all those factors, and ultimately the global warming is going to impact on us. So therefore, more frequent wildfires, longer period of droughts in certain part of the country and also some region, and also an increase in the duration and intensity of tropical storms are experiencing due to these climate change activities. Uh, so the climate change due to the global warming can include weather pattern like drought and flooding, much more uh, within our environment. Things that we depend upon, value, water, energy, transportation, wildlife, agriculture, ecosystem, and human health are experiencing the effect of changing climate in different ways. So, extreme weather events are already more intense across the globe and threatening the lives and livelihoods of the people. With further warming, some region could become uninhabitable as farmlands turn into deserts. If you can consider this, Africa is currently facing its fifth season of failed rain, with the UN's World Food Program says they have to put up to 22 million people at a risk of severe hunger. So extreme temperature can also increase the risk of wildfire due to the global warming. As seen in Europe this summer, France and Germany recorded about 7 times more land burned between January and middle of July 2022 compared with the average. So therefore, hotter temperature also means that previously frozen ground will melt in places like Siberia, releasing greenhouse gases, what Professor Gandhi mentioned. And this was trapped for centuries. And then these things will be released into the atmosphere and further worsening the climate change. So therefore, in other regions, stream rainfall is causing historic flooding, as seen recently in China and Pakistan in Nigeria. So therefore, people that are living in developing countries are expected to suffer the most as they have fewer resources to adapt to climate change. So therefore, there is a frustration from these nations as they have produced the least greenhouse gas emission into the atmosphere. Their contribution is very low, but they have been hammered very badly due to the global warming and as a result of climate change. And not only that, planet's oceans and its habitat are also under threat. According to the research published in April, funded by the US National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, they suggested that between 10% to 50% of marine species are already at risk of extinction. So therefore, you will see that today ocean has absorbed 90% of the heat generated by the rising emissions. As the excessive heat and energy warms the ocean, the change in the temperature leads to unparalleled cascading effect. Ice melting, sea level rise, marine heat waves, and ocean acidification. So these are the major consequences of climate change. If you consider the some of the climate change that is going to affect the ocean, coral bleaching, fish migration will be affected, drowning of wetlands will be wiped out, ocean acidification and disastrous positive feedback loop will operate. So these are the major problem as far as the impact of the climate change on the planet, and this can be a region or country or state where we are suffering. But it is very important to record here that irrespective of your contribution to the global warming or the greenhouse gases, the nature is going to punish whether you made it or not. I think it is clear that what are the major impact of climate change, and what is the impact of climate change and direct consequences of the man-made climate change activities.
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Padmalal. So that why climate change is important. It was bring out and reflected by Dr. Lakshman, and then the the impact of the climate change was examined by Dr. Padmalal. So now we are in a very clear position why it is important and why we should look into that. So here, going another step forward, I would invite Mr. Gardi to give his reflections about how will climate change affect the world and why is there a need to act? So I think, Mr. Gardi, could you please give your reflections based on that area?
Yeah, thank you, Sugandhi. And in fact, now if we think about now, the climate change has already affected the world. Now, if we think about it, now over the past several decades, key indicators of the climate system. There are key indicators of the climate system. You know the climate systems. Climate system are increasingly at a level unseen in centuries to millennium and are changing at a rate unprecedented in the at least the last 2,000 years. So therefore, we haven't taken now. Some of the things have happened. It hasn't happened of last 2,000 years. Now, actually, what is the climate change is important is because now this is suddenly. Now, the climate is changing for a million of years slowly. But what is happening is, if happened in about 10,000 or 6,000 years, now it is happening within 100 years. So that is the thing is we can't adapt to that. So then if you think about it, the temperature, if you take the temperature already in the high side and most recent decade, that is 2011 to 2020, exceed the warming continental scale ranging down. They have reconstructed for the past interglacial years, but it has exceeded that also. That is in last 6,500 years, the temperature is more than that. It has happened in last 6,500 years. It has happened within this short period, 0.2 to 1 degree Celsius. Now, the evidence of the warming world, now we know that warming world, what is happening has come from the multiple independent climate indicators. What are these climate indicators? If you think the climate indicators, from high up to the atmosphere to the depth of the sea. So these indicators are from their surface atmospheric and ocean temperature has already risen. Now that is no doubt because all these years you can see within this few years from 1950 onward, the temperature has risen very high. And then the glaciers has already vanishing now, most of the glaciers. And snow cover also diminishing. What is happening is even Arctic and Antarctic of course snow, only the snow cover, but Antarctic also Greenland also reducing. Then the sea ice also going down. Sea level is rising. Already we know that the sea level is rising because sea level is rising at a level, it doesn't happen in last so many years, about 10,000 years. Then the atmospheric water vapor content is increasing. So then the changing extreme events. Now extreme events, already we know that extreme event, cold days has reduced. Cold days are reduced and warm days has increased. Cold days and night both. And warm days and nights are increasing. Now that of course we are experienced. You know, I was in Peradeniya University, that is about 55 years back. And at that time, in our lecture halls, we didn't have fans in Peradeniya. And even our halls also, no fans, nothing, but we didn't feel, because even December, we used to wear jerseys. Because I was from Goa, so that side is warm. But now, recently I went there for a thing, but now it's really warm. Even the Peradeniya, if you can see, then they have the fans and they have done the air conditioning. Those days with lectures, we didn't have any fans at all, but we didn't feel any warm. So that is already happening. That is, the warm days are increasing. And I don't think now in Colombo we have a lot of cold nights. Cold nights also reducing. And the frequency of intensity of drought also increasing. Why the drought increasing? Because now we know that the countries close to the sea, we getting flooded. Because the thing is, because of the climate change, sea temperature goes up. What will happen then? There will be more water vapor and then cloud formation and then more rain. Because now I told you the water vapor, the maximum time it can spend in the atmosphere is about 10 days, not more than 10 days. So it has to come down. It precipitated. So that's why we are not taking now. Actually, 3 times the warming is done by the water vapor than carbon dioxide. But we are not taking water vapor as greenhouse gas for the mitigation, but it's a feedback. That is, when the temperature increases, water vapor increases, then it is increasing. So then the cyclones, even the tropical cyclone might increase, because the cyclone formation, you need the sea surface temperature warm, about more than 26 degrees Celsius. When if the temperature is increasing, there will be more cyclones. And it has happened, actually this is the cyclone activities. So then even what will happen in the country, the big countries, middle, because of the temperature, water vapor inside that one also goes up. When the water vapor reduces, then there will be drought in those areas. So therefore, the drought and floods comes together. So that is one thing. And like Dr. Padmala said about the permafrost. And the permafrost is the frozen ground. Now, in some lakes areas, permafrost is down there because it actually prevents seepage of water to the water inside. So what will happen? The permafrost dissolve, then all the water, the lakes won't get water because it will seepage down. Because that is the permafrost, and there will be muddy areas, more muddy areas. So those are the things actually happening in Europe. So we don't have to worry about the permafrost and other things, but even they have to take this very seriously. Even the temperate countries, sometimes they think that because of the warming, it might better, because the wheat, they can grow in some areas, so it goes up, and the temperature increases. But what happens is, their summer temperature, there might be more heat waves, because summer temperatures are normally going up to about 35, 36, even 40, even Canada. So what will happen is, if there will be more, because now even we can bear some of the heat, but sometimes they can't bear the heat. So therefore, this is heat waves will increase. So those are the world problems. And the other thing is, what will happen is now there's a Gulf Stream. Gulf Stream is actually, because of the Gulf Stream is existing because of the very cold water in that area, that is near Canada. So what will happen is when the ice is melting, so most of the water, now top ice is not salted. So then it will be more fresh air. When the fresh water comes, then this Gulf Stream become weaker. So because Gulf Stream is one of the things circulate the heat from tropical areas to the temperate areas. So these are the things, I think, most of the things. The sea level, like the sea level rise. Now sea level at the moment it is rising, but it will rise now with the scenarios. Of course, sometimes it might go up to 0.8 meters in 2100. So the small islands are in chaos. So the thing is, and what we have to do is we have to keep the temperature in 2100 below 1.5 degrees Celsius. So that is what the people are trying now, to keep the temperature from the pre-industrial period to now, to keep the temperature below 1.5 degrees Celsius. So I think I have answered your question, but any more things you need, you can just ask me any.
Yes, Mr. Gardi. Actually, your explanations verified that we have to act now. Actually, that's why I think the world leaders are there at COP27, trying hard to come into negotiations just now. And I humbly wish that all these big emitters that I'm not going to mention the names now, but these big powerful countries come into negotiations and agree to reduce emissions, because based on this ongoing discussion, we understand how important we have to act now. The world have to act now. Otherwise, the small island countries like Sri Lanka and many more other island countries would be the very first victims when the world going down in this chaos. So again, when you were discussing about Peradeniya, that we most of us can endorse what you say now, because being there for some time, we also understand the reality, how the fans come in now, how things changing. It is something we never thought earlier. With all these things now, I think that we are in a very good point of this discussion. However, this reminds me, when we think about protected areas, that protected area is a key to help communities and the nature, because actually protected area is help nature communities with the changing climate, because it can buffer the extreme weather events. Then again, we understand for some time there had been technical political dialogues about importance of strategizing protected areas as a very good strategy to combat this problem, to combat climate change, so that as a climate resilience development prospect, that protected area is having a very important place. So here that to explore this further, let's start from what is protected area and how the protected areas governed in Sri Lanka. So now I invite Dr. Lakshman to elaborate us and introduce what are the protected areas and how they are managed in Sri Lanka, and bring us to the point where how the protected areas contribute to mitigate climate change impact. So over to you, Dr. Lakshman.
Yes, Sugandhi. Actually, in Sri Lanka, the protected area, basically the protected area means that landscape or seascape, that human activities are very much limited and allow the natural phenomena to follow or continue. That is basically basic thing in about the protected area. And actually, at the moment, I am in the protected area now. I am now in Minere Giritale Nature Reserve. It is a kind of protected area, one protected area managed by the Wildlife Department. Sri Lanka, that protected area has basically two objectives, main objectives. One is protect biodiversity, existing biodiversity. And the second one is protect the catchment. Those are the basic and fundamental objectives of the protected area. There are a number of other objectives, but basically biodiversity conservation and the conservation of catchment area is main thing. And one is to considering this valley, the protected area has been categorized in several categories, from strict nature reserves to sanctuaries. The strict nature reserve means that you can understand the validity or the legal status of this SNR, strict nature reserve, by the name that we have given to that area, strict nature reserve, strictly protected places. And then national parks and jungle corridors and forest connectivities and several categories we can observe, in Sri Lanka we have. And similarly, other countries also, similar categories we can see in other countries also. And in Sri Lanka, apart from the Wildlife Department, Wildlife Protected Area, there are another protected area managed by the other institute, that is Forest Department. It is Conservation Forest and Forest Reserves. And whatever the categories or whatever the designation or whatever the conservation status, the major objectives of those protected areas are conservation of biological diversity and also the protection of their catchment capabilities. And Sri Lanka, we have two major departments of government agencies, the Wildlife Department, Wildlife Conservation Department, and the Forest Department. They managed about 29% of the land in Sri Lanka as reserved forest. And we have experienced that we can see, apart from these reserve forests, there are huge areas and even not actually the huge area, but considerable amount of land area can be considered as a forest, or there are kind of vegetation that they provide protection for the land. And those areas would be managed by other agencies, or sometimes it is a private owned lands. And the problem we have is with these lands. The lands protected by the Forest Department or Wildlife Department has not much threatened by other activities, but the lands belongs to the private owners or the other entities, other agencies, are very much subjected to change the land use pattern, or their removal of forest, or remove their the vegetation removal, or resettlement, or any other development activities we can experience with these forest lands. But considering the climatic conditions or weather pattern or climate change things, even those areas are very, very important to absorb the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, and also to control or absorb the rainwater and release there gradually to control flood or the landslides, and also to protect other things that need for the conservation or the protection of human being. And but I think that systems to be established to prevent such land. And another thing, Sugandhi, I can say that even Sri Lanka as a small country, and also with considerable amount of forest cover, the 29% is quite, we can say that it is very significant amount, and we have. And also that is only the reserve forest, but non-reserved forest area, or we can say Kandy home garden, is like a forest, and those areas also need protection or need some kind of management to combat some kind of disasters. And what I am trying to say that in Sri Lanka as a small country with considerable amount of forest cover does not contribute to the climate change. But we as a country are impacted, affected. What we have to do that we have to plan to mitigate this impact, or try to take precautions to mitigate the impact. That is the things we can do. And in other case that sometimes we can say that we have to do more forest, we have plant more forest areas to absorb carbon dioxide. Yes, it is correct. It is correct. But considering the global scenario, the Sri Lanka area and available forest cover is contributed very less for that. So in Sri Lanka, what we have to do to implement the mitigation measures to control or mitigate the human climate change impact. Yes, over to you, Sugandhi.
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Lakshman. Yeah, of course, that explains a lot. Anyway, then again, you mentioned that even Sri Lanka is having forest cover more than beyond protected areas. This reminds me about that Sri Lanka is being a hotspot. We have a considerable threatened biodiversity even outside these protected areas. That's why Sri Lanka has worked on environmental sensitive area policy also. I think Dr. Padmalal also would agree with me, because he was there when we were developing it by the government, because there also that one criteria which has used to identify ESAs, it could be a land parcel that would be important to mitigate the climate change, so that natural forest covers which are importantly contribute for the mitigation has to be conserved or sustainably managed. That's why even actually it is being addressed in the National Environmental Sensitive Area Policy also. So here that with that, I would like to go to the next point here that okay, here I would like to go back to 1972. In 1972, we had this Stockholm Conference that actually the word environment was brought in for the first time. It was discussed about human and environment. So after 30 years, then in 1992 at the Rio, so that conference, 3 important conventions came out, including biodiversity and the United Nations Convention on Climate Change. So these things are very important milestones in this pathway. And after another 30 years, in 2022, even at the Stockholm conference, then again at the COP27 and Bonn and all these conferences, we are looking back what we have done. Have we done right? Are we in the right path? But anyway, before I babble so much, I think the best person to talk about this is Mr. Gandhi, because I saw, even I was not born by then, but Mr. Gandhi was there at meteorological department, and I think he has been an active member in the picture. So I invite Mr. Gandhi to elaborate more about international response to climate change.
Yeah, if you think about the international response, you know that greenhouse emission is not now, if you emit greenhouse gases, there are no boundaries. And the other thing is long-lived greenhouse gases. Mostly long-lived greenhouse gases stay in the atmosphere more than 100 years or more than 30 years. So therefore, it has time to cross the borders and go to the other countries. So therefore, this is greenhouse emission is a common problem. So therefore, because of this common problem, we need the international response. I mean, internationally, we have to get together to mitigate the greenhouse gases. Or that is the only thing is mitigate. And at the same time, you get the new technologies. So we know that the first of this mitigation part is actually coming from the UNFCCC, because earlier there was a committee called Negotiation Committee, and the Negotiation Committee conducted several years, and ultimately in 1992 they came to the United Nations Framework Convention of Climate Change. And then in 1994 it adopted, and I think almost all countries agreed for that. So therefore now in that one is there are so what is the ultimate objective of that? Ultimate objective of the convention and any related legal instruments and the conference are the actually stabilization of greenhouse gas concentration in the atmosphere at the level that would prevent dangerous anthropogenic interference with the climate system. So therefore, this is really open. So now the thing is, what is the dangerous anthropogenic interference with the climate system? Such a level should be achieved within the time frame sufficient to allow ecosystem to adapt naturally to the climate change. So they have to ensure that food production is not threatened, and to enable economic development to produce in the sustainable manner. So therefore, this is the actually UNFCCC main thing. So then after some time, this Kyoto Protocol came, that is in actually 1997. And what is the Kyoto Protocol says, 1997, they agreed that between 2008 to 2012 to reduce 5%. Now, the UNFCCC actually they divided countries into Annex 1, Annex 2, and non-Annex. Now, Annex 1 countries are the countries, developed countries. Annex 2 countries are very developed countries from the developed countries who can support the developing countries to reduce the climate change. So they have to do the funds. And non-Annex 1 countries are the countries they don't have to reduce. So all these problems about the Kyoto Protocol came from the non-Annex countries. Because non-Annex countries, I don't have to mention, you may be knowing, there are countries, even the amount of greenhouse gas emission is very much more. But per capita greenhouse gas emission is less. So they come under the developing countries. So because of that, the United States didn't support this Kyoto Protocol. And actually, Kyoto Protocol is actually to reduce carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, HFCs, PFCs, and sulfur hexafluoride by 5% below 1990. But they have to achieve this one in 2008 to 2012. But nothing happened. So the thing is now Kyoto Protocol is no longer valid, and they gave the clean development mechanism. So many things to, but I think our country also get some benefit out of clean development mechanism, because that is the between the developing and developed countries can do. Then in 1997, then came the Copenhagen. No, after that, then COP15, they came the Copenhagen Accord. But that is not a legal binding one, and that is now actually Paris Agreement. I think Paris Agreement, almost all countries agreed, and the Paris Agreement, that's a legal binding international treaty on climate change. It was adopted by 196 parties at COP21. So therefore, it is the one actually in Paris on 12 December 2015 and entered into force on 4th November 2016. Now that's a legal binding one. Now, actually, we have to go with the Paris Agreement. Its goal is to limit the global warming to well below 2 degrees, preferably to 1.5 degrees Celsius compared to pre-industrial level. By 2100, we have to keep this global warming up to 1.5 degrees Celsius. Now, how can we achieve that? So that is now at the moment on the IPCC, they have shown with all these models, it is very difficult to achieve. So unless the countries reduce the carbon dioxide, now greenhouse gas emission very much more. So therefore, now actually, now it works actually. Implementation of the Paris Agreement required economic and social transformation based on the best available science. The Paris Agreement worked on 5-year cycle of increasing the ambitious climate action carried out to the countries by countries. By 2020, countries submit their plans for the climate action. So there are no non-annexed countries, so annexed one countries. So all the countries, they have to submit the national determined contribution, that is NDCs. I think our environmental authority might do this, environmental ministry. So therefore, they have to do this NDCs. NDC is the main thing, shows how you can reduce the greenhouse gases. And then there are countries, actually, they are in the Paris Agreement also, like Kyoto Protocol, countries who like to support these countries to do this NDCs and reduce the greenhouse gases. So therefore, this is, unless you reduce the greenhouse gases, now according to the, now they are the climate, because they are using the now the scenarios, actually they call the social so the SSPs, because with the SSPs 1.19 is the least one, because that is the least emission carbon dioxide. Because unless you do with this, you can't have the climate temperature below below 2 degrees. So therefore 2 degrees is really very difficult to achieve. So I hope, like you said, the COP27, they will agree to support, because I think now most of the countries, they are going for the zero carbon. So unless you go for zero carbon within the mid 2050, so without emitting the carbon, like I said, to stop the blankets, putting the blankets, and then what will happen is natural things will slowly remove the other carbon dioxide in the atmosphere by another 50 years. Because first of all, you have to stop the emission of carbon dioxide. So that is what all these international response, actually international communities That's to do. So I think this is how it goes.
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Gardi. When you were talking about this, it brought few things to my mind also, because when we are thinking of this world commitment, the commitment of leaders in recent years, we see that the commitment from developed countries, especially in OECD, is declining slightly under the present context. Also, when we look into bilateral funding, it also is not very promising right now, even though it was increasing slightly around 2019. Now we don't see it anymore. Even bilateral, multilateral fundings, they also shows the similar kind of situation. While the world acknowledge the situation, is still the big private sector corporations, while they make the assessments, still people don't hesitate when they do big investments on the things which may ultimately let the GHG gas emissions. So in these scenarios, when we look at our world, when we see our international commitments, what is happening right now, even there are funding for mitigation and adaptation. But if we think about loss and damage, is it sufficient? Because when considering the amount which is dedicated on adaptation, still for the loss and damage, the loss is quite high. The investment needs is quite high. Even the countries who ultimately become part of contributors for this situation are not paying much attention on the loss and damage of the victimized countries. So that's why actually even in COP27, I think there is renewed effort to make solidarity in order to achieve this. Again, considering the NDCs, yes, of course, even if we take Sri Lanka as example, after submitting the NDCs around 2015-16, then the countries were required to update these NDCs, so that with the support of a lot of efforts around climate promise and other things, so that the countries like Sri Lanka and 100 more countries submitted the updated NDCs in 2021. And then after submission in during COP26, it was discussed the importance of implementing these updated NDCs, because we made the pledge and then we want to make the pledge into impact. So that's why the world is now working on making the pledge into impact. So the focus and concentrations have to go there. When we talk about it, but still we see that we need a big amount of money. So when we think of this, but do we have natural solutions on this which will not require that much of investments? So it is another opportunity for us to think of these things also. So if I think of few examples, what do we have as natural solutions? It comes to my mind that protect our best ally, which is the ocean. Then again, protect and restore forests. Then we have to use regenerative agriculture. Then think about our wetlands. Then again, give more lands for the nature. So these are simple natural solutions which comes to my mind. But I think this is a very good area to explore further and think further. So this is the good time for Dr. Padmalal to come in and expand the this thematic area on natural solutions. So here, Dr. Padmalal, I want to pose these two questions to you. What reduces the greenhouse effect on Earth? And then, what are the nature-based solutions, type of nature-based solutions, their core benefits, and any concerns? So over to you,
Okay.
Dr. Padmalal.
Thank you, Sugandhi. As a UN coordinator, you are coming up with all these conventions and, and also you are the now coordinator for the climate change from the UNDP to Minister of Environment. So Of course, the conventions started in, I would like to give some background details about these conventions and the environment and development. And as you are very well aware, the nature was threatened during the 60s, and Dr. Richard, Dr. Gazan's Silent Spring, after her book, the world opened their eyes to see that what is happening around them, what was happening around them. Then, as a result of that, as a result of that, world leaders met in Stockholm in 1972. 1972 to have these Stockholm Conference on Environment and Development. So from there, we were concerned about the environment. Before the 1972, you know that, Sugandhi, we had the Ramsar Convention, then we had the UNESCO MAB, Man and Biosphere Program. After 1972, in 73, we had the famous CITES Convention. Like that, then we had the Montreal Protocol in 1987, then Basel Convention 1989. Then finally, 1992, we came to the Convention Earth Summit, where we had three major convention: environment and development, climate change, and biodiversity. After that, we had this, as Gadi mentioned, that the Kyoto Protocol, the different declarations, and time Rio 10, Rio 20, like that, and we developed. So everything that we are trying here today is to is to reduce the we have two options in terms of greenhouse challenging this present day crisis in terms of global warming, what reduce the greenhouse effect on Earth. And if you ask how do we reduce the greenhouse gases, so we have two options. One is the major one option is to reduce the greenhouse gases using different type of technology, and in that scenario, then that is how we reduce the greenhouse gases emissions. So use less electricity, generate electricity without emission, that means solar power and so forth. Then we will have to reduce and shrink our footprint of food. So therefore, it automatically reduces the greenhouse gases. Then the travel without making greenhouse gases. So the transportation industries are the major contributory factors to the greenhouse effect. So therefore, major option is that the reduce the greenhouse emission, with the collective collaboration. That is one option. The second option is take the greenhouse and other main carbon dioxide out of the air to the land. So because the carbon dioxide emission is much more higher now, because if you can put carbon dioxide out of the air, that means into the soil and to the earth surface, then that will reduce the greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, and then we'll be able to mitigate certain amount of problem. So in this scenario, we will have two major options: either reduce or the trap. So then, in other words, we'll have to adapt and we'll have to mitigate. So in order to take carbon dioxide out of the air, so you, as Dr. Lakshman mentioned, protected area is going to play a vital role in that game. So that is what we want, is the planting new forest. Planting new forest will absorb more and more carbon and store in their stems. And making changes to the forest management also can help to forest to take more carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere, right? On farms, the amount of carbon dioxide stored in the soil can be increased by growing cover crops, right? adding manure or compost to the field and reducing the amount of that field are tilled. So therefore, what is important here is you will have to trap the carbon, put them into in the trees and put them into the soil, which is called carbon sequestration process. That is the mitigatory measures. Apart from the mitigatory measures, what you can do is you will have to adapt yourself. So you will have to adapt yourself, use electricity. As I mentioned earlier, you will have to have a very sustainable and simple living. Then what we really wanted to highlight here is that the right from the beginning we have been talking of whether the climate change, greenhouse gases, ultimately the human activities activities have increased the greenhouse gases, which absorbs more and more heat, and planet Earth becoming more warmer, and because of more warmer climate change is taking place, and we discuss all these consequences. So the only thing is that we have two options: reduce the carbon gases emission and trap the carbon dioxide in the air and put them into the plants and to the soil. So those are the two major options. So they are your lifestyle, your what is called not only the lifestyle, the government interventions, education programs, and readiness of the people to tackle all those things, and agreements will play a major role. So I will discuss during my next discussion the protected area as a natural solution to take carbon dioxide out of there, as well as the mitigation and adaptation measures. Over to you.
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Padmalal. Can you
On
hear
the
me?
other hand, Sugandhi, you are very familiar with that. The take carbon dioxide out of there. We are also working on the protected area, as Dr. Lakshman mentioned, and also you have come up with the biodiversity action plan. I know with the world leaders' contribution, that not only the protected areas, OE, other environmental conservation measures. You are the one of the pioneer members who initiated these activities with the Ministry of Environment from the UNDP as a focal point. And these are the things that the people will have to work in the future, so that we will be able to contribute to reduce the greenhouse effect on Earth, and as as a country, Sri Lanka can contribute in different ways. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Padmalal. Yes, actually, thank you for the recognition, and then I'm really thankful for all of you for giving support to Ministry of Environment to come up with these timely interventions and getting them into the national implementation, so that we have things going on. And again, these days that Ministry of Environment is developing the 2050 carbon net zero roadmap for Sri Lanka, so that these also have the considerations of the area of forestry and all other mitigation areas, so that we hope the things are going in order in our countries, even though we are not the huge contributors, but still, as modest countries, we are trying our best. So that now, when we are moving forward, since we were discussing about nature-based solutions, so I think this is high time for us to understand that how climate resilience could be achieved through the protected area management. So that building on what Dr. Padmalal was explaining to you right now, I hope Dr. Lakshman would be the best person to explain us how the climate resilience could be achieved through the protected area management. Over to you, Dr. Lakshman.
Okay, Sugandhi. I think that now many of you can understand with this discussion and with these presentations, the protected areas with vegetation absorb carbon dioxide and purify our atmosphere. And also deposit carbon in the tree as wood. And these would store the carbon for a long period of time. So that means the atmospheric carbon dioxide can be stored within the trees as a wood and store long period of time without releasing back to the atmosphere. As I explained earlier, climate change impact mitigation by controlling flood and landslide, water purification, and water security will contribute for climate resilience considerably. That means the protected area contributes for the climate resilience considerably when we consider about the controlling of actually the contribute to mitigate the impact of climate in especially in our country. And I would like to bring your attention for another aspect within this within the framework of your question, that all our experts and everybody will explain we have to increase the forest cover and we have to reduce the emission of carbon dioxide. And other important things we have to think about the issues and the impact of the forest by the human. What I wanted to say that I have seen let me to bring your attention to a Sinhala song, popular Sinhala song in recently, that there is two sentences. One is Husma Bedana Rusagas Yaya Pitin Niti Yaya Pitin I forget Kerala Ido Reta Hetu Hoeno. Another thing is one Dala Dilisena Hasti Rajun Semin Hemin Nidhi Kerala Swargete Yanna Hadano. I think that this explain everything. You can hear, if you did not hear listen that song, you can hear the persons who are listening this dialogue or the presentation, you can hear that song is very, very important. And they give very, very important message to us. And when we come back to your questions, that we can believe that apart from the controlling the release of greenhouse gas to the atmosphere, absorbing them to reduce the carbon concentration, absorbing them from the atmosphere to reduce the carbon concentration is very, very important. So the protected area contribute to climate change resilience or the control the climate change and climate change impact. Okay, Sugandhi.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lakshman. So you brought another aspect to the discussion, bringing the song. Yeah, that most of us know the song and we feel it, that most of the people feel it because we are facing that reality right now. So that it was clear what you were trying to tell us. So then again, in this scenario, what the country is doing, what we are doing right now, actually that Sri Lanka has updated the national determined contributions in 2021. And now the Ministry of Environment with all the other respective ministries, agencies, and everyone is working to implement these national determined contributions, so that they are in the process of developing these implementation plans in a more gender responsive manner. So while things are going on, Ministry of Environment, with consultation of all other government, civil society, private sector, everyone has developed National Environment Action Plan until 2030. So that again, we have national adaptation plans. Moreover, there are more things like net zero carbon roadmaps, and then other interventions that a lot of people are doing together. So things are going on. In this scenario, that it came to my mind that even that we are in the process of reviewing the climate change policy, because Sri Lanka climate change policy has been done in 2012 before we ratify these conventions after 2050, before the Paris agreements. So that there is the need of reviewing the climate change policy, and the ministry is taking it up right now, and the process is on progress. I think most of you have been in the process, and so this is the time I think I need to hear from Dr. Padmalal. What do you think? How do you explain that nature-based solutions role in a climate policy, and how the governance considerations could be taken into this? So over to you, Dr. Padmalal, to discuss more about the role of nature-based solutions in a climate policy. Over to you, Dr. Padmalal.
You are mute.
Hello,
Dr.
could you
Padmanabhan,
hear me?
please unmute,
Yes.
please.
Dr. Padmalal?
Okay. Can you hear me?
Right.
Yes.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Of course, as I mentioned earlier, so there are two options. One is the capturing the carbon from the atmosphere and put them into these soil or the trees. Then by doing that, we can reduce the global warming, the gases responsible for global warming, that automatically that will result in climate change. So other one is that you can reduce the emissions by your day-to-day activities, that that the government must have the policy in order to do the reduction of greenhouse gas emission, as well as the nature-based solution for us to capture more and more carbon dioxide, and also nature-based solution as an adaptation and mitigatory measures as a climate change policy and the governance consideration. So the natural climate solution mainly I considers other conservation and restoration and improved land management action that increase carbon storage or avoid greenhouse gas emission in landscapes and wetlands across the country or across the globe. The combined with innovations in clean energy and other efforts to decarbonize the world's economies, natural climate solution offer some of our best option in the response to the climate change. So therefore, natural climate solution offer some of the best options. So some of the most promising ways to mitigate climate change are what we call natural climate solutions. The conservation, the restoration, and improved management of land in order to increase the carbon storage, right? That will avoid greenhouse gas emission in the landscape is paramount of importance, and that must be incorporated into the government policies as when we are combating global warming. If you consider why, if you ask me why protected areas, will you consider here? As you are well aware, even in this country and even in the world, protected areas are the proven effective governance system for managing land and terrestrial, coastal, and marine ecosystem. Right? And these systems, protected area systems, are already established as efficient, successful, and cost-effective tool for ecosystem management, where you can use it as adaptive management strategy. On the other hand, the protected area have associated laws and policies, management and governance institutions, knowledge and staff and capacity, so that we can make use of all these scenarios, all these plus points in establishing protected areas and subsequently bringing them in under the this policy framework. Not only that, why protected area? If you're asking, they contain only remaining large natural habitat in a country or in many areas in Sri Lanka as far as concerned. So there are a lot of opportunities exist to increase their coverage in context of Sri Lanka, marine and coastal areas. And also when you consider the Sri Lanka connectivity at a landscape level. So therefore we are having a landscape approach, and the effective management can be done within the using effective management program. All of which what I am talking which enhance the resilience of ecosystem to climate change and safeguard the vital ecosystem, ecosystems and ecosystem services. Those things will be able to adapt and mitigate climate change, the climate change activities. The protected areas and reserves in an essential part of the global response to climate change. It has been recognized. They can contribute in two ways, which I mentioned: adaptation as well as mitigatory measures. So if you consider the adaptation, there are so many evidence for role of use in protected areas in ecosystem-based adaptation strategies in Sri Lanka. And there are some challenges. So ecosystem-based adaptation is the use of biodiversity. Use of biodiversity within the protected area and landscape, and ecosystem services as a part of adaptation strategy to help us to cope up with the adverse effect of the climate change. Therefore, I would like to record that the Millennium Ecosystem Assessment estimate that the 60% of the global ecosystem services are degraded. However, even in Sri Lankan context, so these services will be being rapidly lost. But the government policies must, as you mentioned, must be taken into consideration. The impact of degraded ecosystem services, the impact of degraded system will have certain problems, but if it is an important one, it will help as an adaptation due to the climate change. It will help the health of the people. It will provide food, and food shortage and crop failure will be reduced. Water will be, water will be conserved, and it will be adaptation for the natural disasters, flooding and storms. Then there are certain opportunities. Protected area provide two major functions, and because it protective function as well as it provides certain services. Therefore, protective functions and the provisioning functions can be used as adaptive strategy because of the climate change. The flooding, landslides will be can be slowed down. Storm surges, drought and desertification, fire will be can be reduced due to the establishment of well-managed protected areas covering spatial and distribution of a country and important areas. On the other hand, it will also will impact on the climate change, will have a lot of impact on fish resources and food resources. The protected area will be important. If we think of adapting to the climate change, we need to take some policy measures to maintain the resilience of ecosystem under new climatic conditions so that they can continue to supply essential services. So therefore, protected area management will need to be adapted to address the mitigation and adaptation needs in addition to the biodiversity management objectives. These things need to be incorporated into the policy. So therefore, it is very vital. I don't want to go into detail. Understanding adaptive management, integration, resilience, restoration, and connectivity, and its economics will play a vital role in this one. If you consider direct mitigation matters, the protected area is having a potential to use use protected area in carbon storage and carbon capture that I mentioned. So the challenges is there. Land use conversion is already responsible for this type of things. Therefore, the government must intergovernmental policies must work with the conservation and the protected area establishing agencies to work out the ecosystem that are currently seeing more carbon dioxide, because they may become a source of emissions. Therefore, we will have to consider all those areas for future action plan. So the opportunities within the protected area, therefore storing and capturing. Therefore, finally, protected areas are very best thing for not only the forest, but also the grassland and soil. These things are very important for carbon capture. So therefore, I don't want to go into more into details. The 50% of the terrestrial carbon is stored in protected area of the world. So therefore, if you can increase, and people in the Paris Agreement, some people came and told us, the government leaders, that they will increase the forest cover. But I don't see that is happening on the ground. So what are the challenges? You need to have new skills, and you need to have gap analysis for protected area design. In this scenario, the Sugandhi that you are talking about, the environmental sensitive area, your work will be a very good mechanism that needs to be incorporated into the climate change adaptation and mitigation policies. And also protected area need to be included in the reduction of emission due to degradation and other funding agencies, funding mechanisms. Therefore, opportunities you need to use protected area in climate response strategies need to be prioritized in three areas. That is policy requirements along with the United Nations Framework of Convention of Climate Change, then that Convention on Biological Diversity, and also national and local governments. So these policy requirements, if you are in the UNDP, you will be able to incorporate them and go for the natural solution, and this will be a major strategy and the opportunity that we can adopt for the global warming, climate change, those disastrous factors. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Padmalal. So we are reaching the final segment, towards the end of this session. However, that it was very interesting, and lot of things, lot of reflections there had been really important session. So that there were very interesting points came out from Mr. Gardi, Dr. Lakshman, and Dr. Padmalal. So that I think you all understood what is the point we were trying to bring up here. But before concluding the session, I would like to give another chance to Mr. Gandhi, Dr. Lakshman, or Dr. Padmalal. If you have anything to add before we wind up, this is the time.
Actually, Sugandhi, for to take home message, I am, as far as I am concerned, now you know that we are at a critical point for the future of our planet, and you know that some of the individual girls who are coming from Greta Thunberg, and they make a lot of discussion and impact on the global the leaders of the major developed countries. So we must consider. We don't have much time. We have only few years, not decades, right, to address the interconnected crisis of climate change due to global warming, and also as a result, we have the biodiversity losses, which is vital for because biodiversity is considered as the biodiversity is our life. So what we do between now and 2030 will determine whether we slow warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. The level that scientists agreed will avoid the worst impact of the climate change. Fortunately, science shows that natural climate solution can be delivered up to a third of the emission reduction we need by 2030. Therefore, natural climate solutions are vital to ensuring we achieve our ultimate objective of full decarbonization and can simultaneously boost jobs and protect communities in developing countries. That is why my message. So there are so many ways and means to you and your people and the society can follow. There are so many options. Please read. And climate is a very critical point, climate change, and everybody will have to think about this crisis twicely. We don't have decades. We have only years to go and reach 2030 targets. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Padmalal. Mr. Gandhi, what is your message to us?
Yeah, I think now we have to tell the people what they can do to mitigate the climate change. Like even your garden, you can plant a tree and switch off the unwanted lights and use the common transport. So if you educate the children and others to do what they can do to prevent the mitigate, but if one is doing that, if the million or 20 million people are doing it, it might be a big thing. So that is what actually we have to do. And even like Dr. Padmanabh said, that carbon captured and stored, those are very important. So if anyone is going to build a carbon dioxide emitting industry, so we can ask them to capture the carbon dioxide coming out from the chimneys and captured inside the rocks. Because now that is also going on now, carbon captured and stored in underground. So that will stay there for a long period, and sometimes it will react and become carbonate in the so that is the thing, and individuals can do it. Even now, even anybody can do something to mitigate the climate change.
Yes. Thank you so much, Mr. Gandhi. So that Dr. Lakshman, who is actually joining from a protected area itself, Dr. Lakshman, what is your message to us? Dr. Lakshman, can you hear us? I think Dr. Lakshman is facing some signal problems. He had messaged me telling he's missing the signals time to time. Dr. Lakshman, are you there?
Yeah. Can you hear me? Yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. But I can say that as the creating awareness or improve awareness among the general public is very, very important. what we have experienced in the protected area management and the environmental conservation, the public participation and the general public understanding of the general public is very vital. So it is very important to increase or improve the availability of the awareness programs to the general public through different ways, using mass media or social media or any media. The general public should be aware about the importance of the protected areas, forest lands, and the impact of climate change, and what are the measures we have to take to mitigate the climate change impact. Okay.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lakshman. So that finally, my take-home message for you is protected areas are an essential part on the global response to the climate change. They address the causes by reducing the greenhouse gas emissions, and then they protect and they provide. So protected areas are really vital, and it is an essential part of the solution for the climate change. So with this message, I would like to convey my greatest gratitudes and sincere thanks to our esteemed panelists, our Dr. Padmalal, Dr. Lakshman, Mr. Gardi, everyone. You made a tremendous job by giving your reflections, insights, and all the vital information by sharing today. So that on behalf of Faculty of Natural Sciences, I convey my sincere thanks to all of you, and then again to the audience who are with us via Zoom and maybe hearing us via live streaming. So after all, thank you all. Have a very good day, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Your excellent coordination and moderation of this work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.